Good morning, all. Steve Parisi here with IBC Global. Hope your day is off to a fantastic start. We've got a fun podcast today. We've got Charisse here, who's been with the company for a long time, heads our case management department. Charisse, how are you?
Doing well, Steve. Thank you.
Sure thing. Thanks so much for doing this today. This will be really, really good to hear for everyone that works with us and ever works with us in the future. So we'll have some fun.
Absolutely.
So I guess just to kick things off, you've worked here at the company for a while, but when did you start? How long have you worked here? And if you want to share about a little bit about your department, your role, have some fun. We'll talk about it.
Okay. Well, I started in July 2020, right in the middle of the
COVID.
COVID pandemic.
Hmm.
So when I came in, it was an adjustment,
Yeah.
but we definitely have made wonderful progress
Yeah.
since then. So it'll be 4 years in July that I've
Wow.
been with the company
Yeah.
and just proud to be a part of the journey.
Yeah. No, I'm glad that you're here because I know case management prior to you, we had a lot of turnover in that department. We did because it could be tough with the applications, learning the rules with different insurance companies and such.
Certainly.
Yeah, and COVID, especially like July, so we're a couple months into it at that point in time, it was busy.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah,
In spite of the pandemic, we had a very high flow
yeah,
of business, but we remained productive. I
yeah.
would definitely say that.
Yeah, definitely. During COVID, like life insurance companies, that was close to the busiest they've ever been for a number of reasons. People wanted life insurance, there was that concern. But two, when you look at just the cash value life insurance product, safe place to put money,
Yes,
that was a big reason why.
definitely.
Like that's why we were swamped.
Definitely.
So you're proficient at your job, and I definitely want to talk about that. But what did you do before you worked here?
Before I started with
Yeah.
IBC, most of my work experience was in the medical field.
Okay.
When I was in New York, I worked for NYU Langone Medical Center.
Oh, nice.
I was a surgical tech and a medical assistant for over five
A long
years.
time.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it was quite a transition moving into life insurance, but the medical experience actually is very helpful,
Yeah.
especially with the underwriting and understanding certain things,
Yeah.
medical records retrieval,
Hmm.
just having that understanding of the inner workings of
Yeah.
the medical office. So that's been something that I would say lent me a bit of an advantage,
Big
even in
time.
this field.
Yeah, I didn't know you did done that before. So your role, like when you were at that company, like was it more when you say surgical tech it was?
Yes,
Were you like with the doctor or
yes.
you okay, did you
In the surgical room, yes.
you're actually like helping like
Yeah.
whoa, okay.
Passing instruments. And so it was a very high pressure
Yeah.
environment,
Hmm.
very high paced. You have to be sharp, anticipate what the next step is going to be. And
Yeah,
so again, that was very transferable as far as
definitely.
the high pace and potential for high anxiety
Yeah.
in this particular field.
Well,
But
definitely trained you well. So this
yeah.
stuff is like a cakewalk then, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm like, pressure, what
Yeah,
pressure?
nice. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your role. So your department is case management.
Yes.
What what does that mean from you? Because I can explain it, but what do you do and what does your department do?
So for case management, we provide support to the client, to the agent, also to our carriers.
Yeah.
We've worked very hard just to solidify those rapports that we've developed. Well, of course, they were developed previously, but
Yeah.
just to continue to strengthen them.
Yep.
So once the client is ready to move forward, we take the information that's
Yep.
collected in the questionnaire. We
Uh-huh.
use it to complete the application
Hmm.
as an added convenience for the client.
Yep.
Um, we advise, of course, when we're able,
Yeah.
if the client has any questions.
Yeah.
Um, we provide follow up through the underwriting
Yeah.
process all the way through until the policy is ultimately placed.
Correct. Yeah.
So definitely, there's a lot of steps that might happen.
Yeah.
A few things that might pop up in between, but definitely, I've learned to just take pride in being
Yeah.
that source of reliable information and just a reference, not just for our clients, but also for our agents.
Yeah, definitely. And you are proficient, especially with the attention to detail, which I
Thank you,
appreciate.
Steve.
Yeah, because I've got a problem sometimes where I give too much detail, but I don't want to leave things out. So I do.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's a game where you learn to balance everything. So let's talk about that a little bit, just with your department. So if someone is going to work with our company, if they're considering getting a life insurance policy or any product, they've got to apply for it.
Sure.
So they have the conversation with the licensed agent. I want to put X amount of dollars into this product, right? All the fun stuff. But then they can't just do that. They do have to apply,
Yes.
be approved, and then after that they can start. So what does it look like? So they apply for a policy, meaning they provide us with the information needed. Then we take that information, you take that information, you populate the application,
Hmm.
but it's not always that simple. So someone might give us information, but like, what do you do to make sure it doesn't become a problem for the client before they get approved? Because things pop up, kind of like if you apply for a mortgage, if you don't disclose all
Hmm.
your information up
Yes.
front, it can just cause headaches. So what are some steps you take just to make sure that things go as smoothly as possible for the person applying? Because that's important. Like, we don't want to have a headache for someone.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So we definitely try to be as transparent as possible as
Yeah.
far as what they can expect
Hmm.
regarding the duration of the underwriting and review period,
Yeah.
which literally it can last from one day, less than 24
Yeah.
hours. We receive some approvals.
Yep.
And then at times it can be extended if we're waiting on information from a client, or
Hmm.
sometimes medical records do tend to extend the waiting process a
Yeah.
bit. So we just try to be as open and upfront as possible
Yep.
so that they are aware of not just what the process entails, but what they can do to help
Hmm.
and move things forward.
Yeah.
So if we review any information and we see anything that we might need to elaborate on or provide further detail, then we do follow up with the client and let them know what would be needed. And of course, it's all in the effort
Yeah.
to support them through the process.
Very nice. So when might someone be approved like that 24 hours? Like, someone applies for a policy and they get quickly approved. That never happened. Like, when I started in the business years
Mhm.
ago, it was like, yeah, that's not going to happen. But it happens a lot now. Like, I love it. Everybody loves
As
it.
do I.
Like, how could someone try and set themselves up when they're applying for a policy to be approved quick? Like, what's in their control and then what's not in their control, where the insurance company just say, hey, you're good, you're approved.
So, what I've noticed is if a client recently went through underwriting for a different carrier,
Yeah.
that definitely does lend itself to a more expedited approval.
Nice.
Um,
Hmm.
Also with the medical portion, so we have the part one of the application, which is the demographics, the product that they're applying for.
Hmm.
The part two being the medical questionnaire.
Yep.
Just providing as much information
Yeah.
on the medical questionnaire definitely does help to move things forward as well.
Yeah.
Reduces the need for follow up from underwriting,
Yep.
and they have all of the information that they need to make a decision.
Yeah.
So I also find that younger people, juveniles,
Yep.
tend to have a more expedited approval process.
It's health issues. Yeah.
Well, yeah, well,
Yeah.
the health issues, even if a person does have health issues, there are still ways that they can contribute to the process moving forward.
Yeah.
So, in the past, I've encouraged clients, if you know that you have an extensive medical history, try and obtain your medical records. We'll provide the medical releases ahead of time at the beginning of the process. That way, they can communicate with their providers. And even if the client doesn't provide the medical records to us directly,
Hmm.
it at least gives their medical provider just a heads up so that they can have everything ready and we can have everything submitted.
Yeah. What can you proactively do to help
Definitely.
alleviate that inconvenience of underwriting taking forever?
Yeah.
So, question just for people listening. So, when someone says, okay, I'm ready to start a life insurance policy, what we'll do is send our questionnaire that just collects the information needed. When they complete it, you're the first person to get that, your department.
We are.
Comes straight to you guys, which is nice. Then you'll populate the application, but that medical questionnaire, do you want to talk about just what that is, just so someone listening, because you mentioned make sure you complete that as accurately as possible. So first off, what is it? And then second, how accurate do I want to be? Like, what if I can't remember the name of a doctor that I saw from years ago? Do I have to worry, or is that okay at the end of the day?
Well, of course, the preference would
Yeah,
be to have all of the information
yeah,
available.
yeah,
It sometimes you may not have the information
yeah.
on hand or just may not recall.
Hmm.
Most of the inquiries from the medical questionnaire are related to current health conditions,
Hmm.
family history, family health history, treating physicians,
Hmm.
if you've had any hospitalizations,
Yeah.
emergency room visits, if you're currently on any medications,
Hmm.
um, as I said, current health conditions, if there
Yeah.
are any diagnoses or anything, if there's ongoing treatment. So sometimes, in my experience, I realize that clients can be a bit hesitant
Yeah.
if they feel that disclosing the information may lead to an adverse decision. So, what I've encouraged clients is that even if you may have a health condition, as long as it's being managed,
Hmm.
you can still receive a really good approval
Oh
rating.
yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, so just basically health history,
Yep.
current health status, family history,
Hmm.
those sorts of things. And most people tend to be fairly knowledgeable
Yeah.
about those things. And the wonderful thing about the medical questionnaire is if you start it and you see a question that you may not have the answer to immediately, you can always discontinue, come back, and resume
Yeah.
after you have the information.
Hmm.
And it's always best just to provide the information up front.
Oh yeah.
If there's anything that's missing, the underwriters usually do follow up
Hmm.
and say, okay, we missed this question on the medical questionnaire. Can they provide extra details on this?
Hmm.
And so even if it's not provided up front, there
Yeah.
is an opportunity to provide it after the fact.
They'll follow up, yeah. Now, what if someone doesn't disclose something on that medical questionnaire because A, they're worried about it? I think if I don't tell them, the company might not know, or B, they just forgot because it was from a while ago. But they didn't answer a question like, is it found? Is my question
Oh, definitely.
every time.
It,
Yeah.
it definitely is
Yes.
found. The underwriters rely on several
They,
sources
yeah.
to confirm the information that is provided.
Yeah.
So I always say that it is best to be transparent,
Yeah.
even if you feel that the information may not work in your favor. The transparency would work more in your favor than withholding the information.
Yeah, because if you withhold it and then the insurance company finds out because they're going to, right?
Hmm.
So they've got their MIB, not Men in Black, Medical Investigation Bureau. No, it is a resource they have.
Yes.
Like they've got access. Like once the client signs the app, there's HIPAA forms in there.
Yes.
They'll get access to all information, like anything someone had. So if they don't disclose it, the individual applying, and then it's found out later, underwriting typically, I would assume, would ask, okay, you either tried to hide this or you just forgot.
Yes.
But it can make it difficult. Like, what else are you hiding? So,
Definitely.
always beneficial to be upfront because, again, they know, view it as a
Yes.
test of how honest is this person before we
Yes.
take their business, being the insurance
Absolutely.
company. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
And if a person has gone through underwriting
Yeah.
for another carrier previously,
Hmm.
that information is again like collected in that
Yep.
database that
Hmm.
the insurance carriers can tap into. So
Yeah.
as an example, if you are applying for an app for a policy
Hmm.
and you state that you're not a smoker, and then they look through
Hmm.
the MIB information, and it comes up that this person previously went through underwriting, and it was determined that they were a
Yeah.
smoker. So underwriting, they don't typically presume
Right.
that the person was withholding or purposely being dishonest. So
Correct.
they do offer an opportunity just to clarify the information
Yep.
and
Yeah.
just to be sure that we're getting all the details needed to make a good decision.
Yeah, right. So just letting the person know that it's okay to be upfront. The rating, it is what it is, right? A lot of times people disclose health information. They think they're going to be declined and they get preferred.
Yes.
Thing that I'd like to say too is when you disclose the information for that application and questionnaire, like if it comes back with a poor rating, say it's a standard non-smoker, which
Hmm.
isn't horrible, but it's
No.
not preferred,
Right.
you can always upgrade it later,
Yes.
which is nice.
Yes,
So
definitely.
it kind of alleviates that vice grip of someone feeling like, oh my goodness, I've got to get the best rating when I start. No, you can upgrade it, and if you upgrade it 10 years down the road, still dates back to day one,
Definitely.
which is nice. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I've seen clients maybe not get the best rating, or in some cases I've seen clients declined,
Yeah.
but not because of a health condition, but because it's not being managed.
Right.
And so I've seen decisions where the underwriter will say, "We'll come back.
Yeah.
Come back in 6 months.
Hmm.
Give us documentation to demonstrate that this is being maintained, that you're
Yeah.
following up and keeping with your physician's recommendations."
Yeah.
And then at that point, they'll receive a favorable rating and able to move forward.
Yeah, I've seen that. I remember a lot of cases with diabetes or a high cholesterol, if someone's on medication but they're not compliant with it,
Yes,
and then their levels are off because of that. That's usually where I've seen personally cases like what you mentioned.
yes.
Right. Yeah.
I've even seen where we receive a decision, and after the decision is made, if the client says, "Oh, wait a minute, that health condition is like that's not accurate," or
Yeah.
I think that you should reconsider, and they can provide documentation
Yeah.
in that moment.
Yeah.
And even though the initial approval may not have been in their favor,
Hmm.
the underwriters are very fair, and they will consider if the proper information is provided.
Yeah, that's a good point too, because that's something where if you know what questions to ask too, like if someone says, "Yeah, I have high A1C levels, I'm pre-diabetic or I'm diabetic," and you hear that, you can say, "Okay, here's what other people have disclosed and where we've had a lot of success." And after you get an offer from underwriting, you can say, "Okay, let me see if the client has more information on this, so they can provide something to get a better rating." Like that, I love that kind of stuff
Hmm.
because it's that extra step to know, okay, someone's approved, but can it be better?
Yes,
What can you do on the back end to
yes,
try and improve it where they might not even know about it, but it's like,
absolutely,
how do I get this to be the best possible? Because it goes a long way in the end.
definitely,
Yeah. Hmm.
definitely.
Yeah, I love that.
And we also have reinsurance,
Yeah.
and there's the ESP
Yeah.
program
Yep.
where
Yep.
they do offer additional consideration.
Yep.
So if they can't offer you the optimal rating, they still try to make adjustments to
Hmm.
to make it work as
Yeah.
much as they can in the client's favor.
You got to know how to play the game. That's the thing.
That's the thing.
So how about this? Someone doesn't like needles. I don't like them, but I do, get my blood work done when I have to. But getting a medical exam for a life insurance policy, is that always a must?
It's not always a must.
Hmm.
The main carriers that we work with,
Hmm.
they if you are under a certain age applying for
Yeah.
a certain death benefit. So it's typically if you're under the age of 50
Yep.
applying for less than 3 million in
Yeah.
death benefit, then they will not require a medical exam.
Which is nice.
There are also options where we have the Insure Check oral swab
Hmm.
process,
Yeah.
which it checks for HIV, drug use,
Hmm.
nicotine,
Hmm.
things like that, and it
Yeah.
allows them to have that same consideration without needing to go through the medical exam.
That is nice. And that's a lot of times where we see those quick approvals where they look at the file, particularly the medical questionnaire. The insurance company runs that prescription med check.
Yes, they do.
That's how they're going to see a lot right there. So if you haven't had any medications prescribed, questionnaire looks good. Usually that's where I've seen the few cases I'm still involved in
Hmm.
approved quickly. You see
Hmm.
a way more than me, which is on a daily basis, which I know, which is cool. Okay. So how about this one? How do you break bad news to clients and the agents here? Because that it's not just telling them, hey, you were declined. Like it's not it's not nice.
It's
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
not our favorite thing,
No.
but at the same time,
Hmm.
it's a part of the process,
Yeah.
and it comes along with that transparency that we like to offer.
Yeah.
So even if a person does receive an unfavorable rating
Hmm.
or an overall decline, we try to offer them alternatives
Yeah.
and let them know what their options are.
Hmm.
So, what we typically do is review the details of the underwriter's decision, and we let them know,
Yeah.
okay, so the decline was based on this. If you have any documentation that negates that, you can provide it to us. We'll submit it on your behalf. And we even tell them you can always apply again.
Yeah.
So if if it was a health decision
Yep.
or I mean, sometimes it may be a citizenship issue,
Sometimes. Yeah.
or different social factors that might impact the underwriter's decision.
Yeah.
So we just let them know that sometimes there's a time frame where a certain issue may need
Mhm.
to be resolved. We let
Mhm.
them know you can give it some time,
Mhm.
come back, apply again. Also, if there's any information that you can provide, documentation that would support a different decision,
Yeah.
then we just let them know what their options are to still try and get an
Which
approval.
is nice. Yeah.
Definitely.
But being upfront, giving them the specific reason why, that's important. And you don't always get that.
No, we don't
Insurance
always
companies,
get,
they can't
no,
all the time because of HIPAA laws. Yeah.
yes.
Mhm.
But I will say that the carriers that we work with are very fair.
Yeah.
So if a client reaches out and says, "Can I receive an explanation of this decision?" then we typically our carriers are very happy to provide that.
Yeah. And there's things that they can do. The client can always request it. They can write a letter just to get more information directly from the
Yeah.
carrier too, which is nice.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
But still, I mean, there's only so much that you can share.
Sure.
But giving the specific reason why. Now, if you're going to break news to someone, let's say they were very eager about getting a policy,
Hmm.
they were declined, and it's more appropriate to make a phone call, that's usually not your department. Like that, we do
Hmm.
ask the specific agent to do.
Yes.
But what do you guys do to help in that case? Is it, hey, here's the reason why, guys, good luck? Or is it more than that?
Well,
Yeah,
typically for the declines, or just adverse decisions,
yeah,
we do allow the agent to communicate that
yeah,
because the agent has that stronger rapport
they
with the
should.
client.
Yeah, I do.
Um,
Hmm.
so again, what we do is just try to give them as much information. If the agent says, "Hey, can you just follow up and get more details on this, or see if there are any alternatives?"
Yeah,
then we definitely try to support them in that
yeah.
way as well.
Very nice, trying to help them
Yeah, I
make
mean, I
life
always try to put myself in the position of the client.
perfect. Yeah,
Um, I mean, we've always been all had experiences, less than savory experiences with customer service or,
yeah.
business management.
Hmm.
And so I know how I feel in situations where I'm looking to someone for advice
Yeah.
or, just for a source of information. And if I feel that they don't value that role,
Hmm. You can
so I
tell.
definitely try to just incorporate that into my dealings with our clients, just so
Yeah,
they know, so they can have confidence that we are trying to help them.
you got their back. Yeah,
Yeah.
treating them how you want to be treated, which is getting all the information up front, but also how you communicate it, just in a respectful manner, not just
Hmm.
like, oh, thanks for all this information. You declined. See you later.
Yeah.
It's like,
Oh
no.
no, definitely not. But especially for the purpose of the high cash value life insurance policies,
Yeah,
even if a person is declined, we let them know, well, you can, do you have children?
yeah,
Do you have grandchildren? Do you have a spouse?
yep,
So, of course, for the purpose of the
yep.
policy, even if you're not able to do it personally,
Hmm.
there are still options.
Alternatives and awareness is key. So it's nice that you do that. The agent does as well. Again, if someone really, really wants a certain product with a certain company, what can you do to try to make it work, even if
Hmm.
the ideal situation isn't available, which happens.
Yeah.
I'd say it's rare when you look at the percentages,
Yes.
but it does happen, and it's nice to know that you got their back.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Cool. Well, any stories you'd like to share from the front line, whether it's about folks you work with or your team?
Let me see. Any interesting stories? Uh, from which shall I choose? No. We've had some clients try to apply for entity-owned policies,
Oh, yeah.
whether it's a business or
Mhm,
or a trust.
mhm,
Those tend to be subject to a bit more scrutiny than
mhm.
just a personal policy. So we've had cases where either the business policy may not be approved, or the underwriters just need a lot more information than the
Yeah.
client is able or willing to provide. And
Mhm,
so then we say, okay, let's just change the ownership arrangement.
mhm.
If you're able to at a later time provide that information, then we can transfer the ownership back.
Yep. Mhm.
So those are some of my favorite cases
Yeah.
where just it's not working the way that they intended, but we're
Mhm.
still able to switch things around We have some clients who have dual citizenship.
That's a big one.
Um,
Yeah.
you know, have business interests, or family in other countries, which leads them to spend extended times
Yep.
outside of the states. And so sometimes people think, oh, maybe I can't get a policy with that. But again, we just try to line everything up so they can sign everything when they're in the states, try to get a head start on the medical records.
Hmm.
And I'm always interested in seeing just those loopholes in the
Yeah.
provisions, even when it's not a standard
That's huge.
situation.
Yeah, because I know in the business, like the thing that I wish I would have known in the very, very beginning is when an underwriter says no to the certain strategy you want to execute
Hmm.
for a client,
Hmm.
the answer is no. But what they don't say is you can do the same exact thing with this arrangement of
Yes.
ownership, where if the business owner owns his policy personally instead of owned by the company, then it's no problem at all. Here's how much you'll get. And it's the exact same thing. The business owner says, yeah, it's the same thing to me. I'll definitely do
Hmm.
that if that's the case for them. But you don't get that from the underwriter. Like they're just
No.
going to say, here's what you applied for. Here's your answer. So being able to do that, to say, okay, here's an option to be aware of because right now you're running into this wall.
Yes.
How do I just not try and run through it, but just easily
Yeah.
go around?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, running through the wall,
Tough.
it might
Yeah.
do damage to self,
Yeah.
but no, definitely. We just over time
Yeah.
and with experience working with the carriers,
Hmm.
different case history. So we're able to just provide insight that even if the underwriters don't give it to us directly,
Yeah.
we know from previous cases what
Hmm.
what the possibilities are.
Got it. Nice. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Oh, well, thank you for being receptive to
Oh,
my insight.
yeah, no, I love how you run the department. You and the girls, Patty and Ashley, they're great. You
Yeah,
guys work well. You've all
tough
worked together.
ladies.
Yeah, they've been here both for a while
Yeah,
now.
over 2 years, both of them,
Yeah,
going on 3 years now.
that helps. The experience and proficiency is what makes it
Yeah.
key.
Oh,
Yeah,
and I always say case management is not for
it's
the
not.
faint of heart.
Nope.
Definitely not. But
Yeah,
these ladies, tough as nails,
yeah,
um, and they care about knowing more
yeah.
and being good at the job. They take pride in their role and being a source of information
Yep.
for our clients and for our agents,
Yeah.
and that makes a big difference.
Yeah, I love it. And what's nice too, so you guys started with the most difficult product in terms of applications and underwriting with life insurance.
Hmm.
So as we're expanding into other products and services, it'll be much easier
Yeah,
when you
definitely.
compare it. So that'll be nice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that'll be nice. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I do
Of
appreciate it.
course.
Yeah, no, thank you very, very much.
Of
And
course.
I'll talk to you throughout the day, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Have a
Steve.
great day, everyone. Thanks so much for watching.